it this time. It's easy for me to do. Um, Light is one of the just first. Oh, I'm still screen sharing. Cool. Um, One of the first things that I started using that just really changed the way that I look at things. Can you see it, by the way? You do. Okay.
Yes.
Hmm. Because when I hit play, does it take up your full screen?
Not right now.
Okay.
I see the okay, now it does, yeah.
Now it does. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's not showing me you guys up in the corner, which is fine, but we'll just go into it. Um, so this week we're going to talk about water, light, and cellular energy. I was initially going to go another 2 weeks with anatomy, but just the conversations we've had about water the last couple weeks, yeah, this just seemed like a really good segue into actually giving some very practical ways that everyone can just go about starting to take something as simple as light and looking at how they really actually use it in their day-to-day construct. So we'll dive in. Um, yeah, last couple weeks we've talked about the stress response cycle, how ATP is generated. That stuff will come in throughout all of these weeks, actually, just because that's like the foundation of the metabolic process. So when we actually get into the specifics of light later on, we'll touch base on some of those pieces, but light is going to be what we talk about today. And just, I want to start with a little bit of history because using sun as a form of healing has literally been around since the beginning of time. We see that even with the ancient Egyptians using heliotherapy and chromotherapy, not just even in their construction of temples, but even just within their belief system, and I would even dare say religion, right? So being able to see the sun as this spiritual symbol of creation, resurrection, cosmic order, this is all embodied by the god Ra, and they really saw the sun's journey as this overall template, excuse me, for existence. So we have this sun being born at dawn, right at the beginning of the day. I'm probably going to butcher these names, so if you are, well versed in this. Whoever listens to this, whenever they listen to it, I apologize. Um, but we have Kepri at dawn, we have Ra at noon. The sun will then pass away at autumn in the evening, and it's believed that it travels into the underworld to be reborn the next morning. And so in ancient Egyptian mythology, Ma'at embodies the cosmic order that sustains the sun's daily journey. So they have obviously multiple deities that they worshipped and revered. And so I speak to this because some of these principles are not just going to be mono in the sense of one, right? You're going to see how these different elements kind of tie together to form these overall belief systems that are not just belief systems, but also embodied in their day-to-day practices. And so we see Mot as the daughter of Ra, and I just thought the explanation of her presence and her intention was really beautiful. Emerging from chaotic creation, she represents the cosmic harmony required to prevent the universe from falling into disorder. She is the embodiment of truth, balance, order, law, morality, and justice. And we ultimately see her in hieroglyphics as a woman with ostrich feathers on her head or with wings. So this next photo, you have Mot on the left and you have Ra on the right. Again, just these deities, and I would even say pictorial aspects of embodied practices that come from very ancient cultures. We again see sun being used as medicine in ancient Greek. Hippocrates really recommended sunbathing for various illnesses such as obesity, joint pain, depression. It was really used to improve overall physical and mental health. We see that as well in traditional Chinese medicine, right? This organ clock that maps 24 hours into into 12 2-hour intervals, which basically track the flow of your chi, your vital life force energy through the organ systems. I have a photo of that on the next page. But that really allowed practitioners to diagnose imbalances by looking at wake up times or symptoms to guide this chi through optimal times for sleeping, eating, organ detoxification, right? There's a time and a place for everything. We even see in indigenous cultures these morning rituals where there's, placement of looking to the east to welcome the sun, offering of tobacco, singing, running at dawn to build mental and physical strength. So we see this using sun as medicine across many cultures. And I would say we are the only one, or maybe one of the few, because I'm not 100% certain, so I don't want to say all or nothing, that don't utilize the sun in that way. And there's plenty of other cultures that embody these practices of using sun as medicine or spirituality in some way outside of the ones that I just listed. But I wanted to pull up, that is a very blurry photo. So I will change that or add a little link. So if you want to look at this photo after in the slides, you can. But this is just going to be kind of um, a visualization of that 2 hour 12 interval aspect of Chinese medicine, where each 2 hours, right, one organ is going to, I don't want to say be in charge, but again, it's that can we look at the body's vitality through the entirety of the sun coming up and the sun coming down? Excuse me, you'll see this again with metabolic processes. Even if you look at the 9 to 11 p.m., we have endocrine and metabolic balancing. This is the time we're getting ready to go to sleep. We see our gallbladder, our liver, and our lungs detoxing in the morning. Ideally, when we wake up between 5 and 7, that's when our large intestines come on. We wake up, we have our first bowel movement. You will find a lot of yogic practices recommend meditating at this time just to bring that internal awareness and not even just internal awareness, but just that being with self, waking up. I'm blanking on the name of it at this point, and that's terrible because we practice Kundalini on Mondays. But there is a practice where you start meditating at like 4:30 and or 5, but you do it for 2 hours, and that is that window of time. Again, you can see stomach all the way through the afternoon. So there is a certain time for everything, and we'll see as we get into those elements of light how that plays a role. I wanted to put this, I know this slide may sound a little cheesy, but I wanted to put this from the Department of Energy because I I think things are left in very plain sight for us. And because of how we've been taught to look at things, there are things that we don't see within certain things. So this quote from the Department of Energy has to do with photons, and that will tie into light in a moment. But photons are the smallest possible particles of electromagnetic energy and therefore also the smallest possible particles of light. They can travel at the speed of light because they have no mass. They represent the entire spectrum of electromagnetic radiation, which includes radio waves, gamma rays, and visible light. The only light that we can perceive as visible light, which just stay with this for a second, is approximately 0.0035 of the total spectrum. What we literally see each day is approximately 0% of the entire spectrum. I don't know about you, but that just blows my entire mind. Um, which takes us into this next slide because when you see quotes, right, like um, quotes from like Nikola Tesla or other individuals that really understood um, frequency and energy, right? Some of the things that they say, I'm blanking on the exact specifics of the quote, but I remember reading somewhere someone said something about like when you understand that the world operates on frequency, you get to interact with it in an entirely different way. And this is that. So those photons carry a frequency, as does everything else in the universe, and that frequency is directly proportional to the energy that they carry, which determines where they're placed in that electromagnetic spectrum. They also exhibit wave-like properties, which is going to represent, right? That wave is going to be this oscillation of their associated electromagnetic wave. And I put the law of rhythm in there because I haven't spoken about it in these series, but if you've worked with me one-on-one, I have talked about the Kabbalion, and I will probably add that into this Google Drive just for people who want to take a look at that. They are, it is ancient Egyptian. Hermetic law, but there's seven laws of the universe that are seven natural laws that exist in everything around us. And so if they exist in everything around us, that also means that they exist within us and we interact with them in every day at every point. We aren't taught that and we don't see that in the way that we've been taught. So when we can start to see where these laws are actually applicable in day-to-day aspects like this, and we can take these day-to-day aspects and then bring them into very concrete experiences that we have, we get to see how we become part of that law and then how that law actually becomes alive and a part of our lives and day to day. And then as we have those practices, allows us to see other things potentially through that, right? So once we start changing the way that we see something, that theme essentially, I usually give the analogy of like an octopus has its tentacles wrapped in things. That octopus is going to be the foundational underlying theme belief system. You're going to see these changes in other areas of life as you start to implement them in one area. Any questions so far? I'm just going to escape so I can see your face. Oh, I don't know what I just did.
Sorry, I'll unmute. I'm good so far.
Sorry. Are we good so far?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing what it's doing today, but it's okay. We're working with
No
it.
worry.
Um, so when it comes to light, I want to just highlight a couple pieces of the importance of skin and eyes and congruency before we actually go into using it as medicine, because there are a lot of ways that we've just been taught to live in day to day, whether it's literally been verbalized to us or we've just watched other people do it. So that's what we do. And there's not like we don't pause to like, I don't want to say think, but it's just not something that we've been taught. So again, all of these things are metabolic. You're not going to be quizzed on any of it, but
Mhm.
taking what we talked about from week 1 and 2, right? And just kind of looking at how energy is converted and then moved into something else and moved into something else. Those light particles that we talked about that we can see are absorbed by the rods and the cones of the eyes, and that energy is then converted to an electrical signal that travels to the brain. The light particles, those photons for the skin, are absorbed through specialized molecules called chromophores. Those are going to be mainly your melanin, your hemoglobin, and your water. And depending on the quality of light, so that's going to be like time of day, where you are location wise, right? The sun at 10 o'clock is going to be very different, closer to the equator than if you were farther north. Also depends on season and where you're at too, right? So ultimately, depending on the layers of the skin and the type of light is going to depend on the biological effects. Maybe you get a little warmer. Maybe there are actual effects like tanning that happen, right? Maybe you're out in the sun for too long and now we have a sunburn, right? So depending on, again, time, quality of light, where that light hits, there's a lot of different factors. But ultimately, your skin is going to absorb it through those three layers. And so this is really important because when light is coherent, meaning incongruence, that your eyes and your skin are taking in the same frequency and waves, you're going to be able to increase the efficiency of that absorption, meaning it can't actually be used as medicine. But when the light is not congruent, meaning it is not consistent between what the eyes and the skin take in, you're going to have different colors, intensities, and quality of lights that you're taking in versus what your skin is feeling or reacting to. And we'll talk about how that actually connects to reactive oxidative stress later, in this slideshow presentation. But the thing I want to hit on now is that this can actually lead to a variety of sensory, physiological, and psychological effects um, because of that incongruency. And so I'm not a specialist on any of these sensory processing issues. This little star here, in the slides, I downloaded them as a PDF. You'll be able to click on that and see the comment that's connected to it. And it will be the article that I got this information from. But you're going to see these sensory processing issues like sensory modulation disorder, sensory-based motor disorder, sensory discrimination disorder. And while those are not DSM mental health diagnoses, you will see that all of those frequently co-occur with autism, with ADHD, anxiety, and PTSD. And so I wanted to pull this photo up, excuse me, because this is one of the ways that that incongruency can happen. We don't even recognize it. I think sunglasses came out from like a fashion standpoint probably in like the 1940s. And before then, what you would see at the beaches, I mean, you maybe have one person in that back photo. Most people in that photo do not have sunglasses on, right? So their eyes and their skin, unless they're, wearing some type of sunscreen or some type of layer that's going to cover the skin, right? You're going to see more of that congruency in that photo versus this photo down here in the bottom, right? Meaning if they're not wearing some type of protective barrier, their eyes and their skin are going to take in different factors. But even if they do have a protective barrier of sunscreen on, depending on what is in that sunscreen, they're also going to get different input factors that will be incongruent because of what they are wearing and using. Um, so just something interesting to consider and think about. I haven't worn sunglasses in probably 3 years, and it was one of the oddest, most challenging shifts that I made because at certain points in the day for like the first month, my eyes would be just they would hurt at certain points because the light was too intense. But as you practice not wearing them, your eyes, it's the same thing as if you take supplements, right? Whatever supplement you're taking, your body doesn't want to create too much of something, so it's going to slow down its own process to make the thing because that thing is coming in. If we're wearing sunglasses, right, we're teaching our body to take in less of that light. But the second that we shift that, you can train your eyes to take in more light over time. So there is this adaptability to the body that's always happening. There's also a comment on this photo because I forget the acronym, but the optometry people recommend sunglasses for you know, certain reasons. And there can be times that obviously it's necessary, but for the most part, I just found it very interesting because when you dig into that congruence in light, if that is a recommendation that's coming from a corporate board of, optometry, is it actually helpful knowing this piece of information? So this is where that critical thinking, like, I wonder, starts to kind of come in. All right, this is where we're going to look at light as medicine. This I'm going to say is like, it's not super beginner, but you could, I could talk about this stuff for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. So what I will do, because I have a variety of podcasts and other pieces, I'll link those in the comments as well. So you guys can use them as other tools and other research pieces. Cassie Huckabee, she's a doctor in San Diego. She has a 3-hour masterclass just on light alone. And I remember watching that a few years ago, and that was really one of the catalysts that completely just made me look at things entirely differently. So if you want more research, please, or more information, please know there's like all of these things you can keep going down and learning more about. But we're going to cover kind of just the specifics today with the time that we have. So morning light is going to be something that really supports metabolic activation. And the reason for that is that morning sunlight contains high blue wavelengths. And so when that blue wavelength enters the eye, again, no pop quiz on this, but it's going to stimulate your IPRGCS. That's going to travel to your SCN. Um, Again, you don't need to know those pieces. What is important is this electrical input actually signals your body to wake up and it resets your biological clock for the day. So we'll see at partway through this when we see the sun go down or we engage in darkness, there is a metabolic signaling to the body to start making melatonin. And that melatonin is going to be what helps you sleep at night. The second your body senses this blue light, it says, we're done making melatonin. It's time to wake up. And now we have this biological clock, essentially, timer that gets set so that there's a release of melatonin 12 to 16 hours later that's going to help you sleep better and deeper. So when people talk about circadian rhythm and going to sleep at the same time and waking up at the same time, this is why, because your body is going to be able to adjust its own clock based on light as long as you're working with the factors of light. That morning sun is also going to provide a healthy cortisol awakening response. So it's not going to be this like steep, boom up, but you're going to slowly just start to wake up. Like I said, you're going to stop making that melatonin. It's going to support insulin sensitivity. Um, a lot of people, when they eat protein in the morning, notice that their blood sugar is much more stable throughout the day rather than just having a cup of coffee or some sugar or some carbs. You're going to see that this early sun increases serotonin synthesis, which is going to help with mood regulation and alertness. And the reason for this is because our digestive system is also going to be signaled to turn on for the day. So we're going to see this morning sun signaling the body to prepare for nutrient digestion. 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So it's not just nutrient digestion, but again, it's that nutrient metabolism that's going to allow all these processes to come in. That's really, really going to support you for the day and just your overall long-term health. And you really want this to occur within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, just to help that body take in that input, right? If we know it does all of these things, what a beautiful way to just allow ourselves the gift of waking up and taking care of ourselves first thing in the morning. This afternoon sunlight is going to help support vitamin D and immunity. Midday sunlight is going to include UVB wavelengths. This is typically going to be between 10 and 2. Again, that's going to vary on location, time of season, all those different factors. Again, no pop quiz, but that 7-DHC is going to convert to pre-vitamin D3 upon receiving these UVB rays. There's going to be a series of metabolic processes that occur in the liver and kidneys, and that's how we actually get the active form of vitamin D. This vitamin D is huge because it modulates over 1,000 genes. It influences immune tolerance, bone density, mood stability. Low vitamin D, we see a lot in mental health symptom mimic depression, anxiety, cognitive issues, low mood, sadness, fatigue, all these things. And part of that has to do with the connection between vitamin D and our immunity. So that vitamin D is actually going to influence immune tolerance because it regulates T cells. T cells express vitamin D receptors. And so if we don't have enough vitamin D, the T cells are actually not going to be able to mobilize effectively. If you go back to our first lecture and just kind of the breakdown of a cell, right? And if you look at not even cell, but just how neurons communicate, you're going to see those dendrites. There are receptors in there where certain things will bind to certain things, right? Insulin will bind to insulin receptors. T cells host vitamin D receptors. And so if there is not enough vitamin D in your body, these T cells are not going to actually be able to mobilize in the way that they need to, which is going to impact immunity and immune response to various day-to-day things. When we get to that evening sunlight, you're going to notice a shift in blue light. And you may not actually notice it because really the light we see is 0%. So again, these are wavelengths, these are frequencies. That blue light's going to decrease. We're going to have an increase in red and amber tones. This is going to tell that SCN from the beginning slide to prepare to make melatonin. And this melatonin is not just a sleep aid or a hormone, but it really lets the mitochondria detox, right? It's an antioxidant. It's going to regulate immune repair, coordinate cellular restoration. And that cellular restoration has so many different components to it, which we'll get into in a minute. Um, Often we consider this darkness as an absence of light, but it's just another form of light because of the signaling that it does. So as that melatonin rises, you're going to have growth hormone release, which is going to be produced by the anterior pituitary gland, and that's going to stimulate growth, cellular regeneration, reproduction, again, that repair cycle of all those things happening during if you go back to the, I guess, 24-hour traditional Chinese medicine clock, right? The cellular regeneration has a ton of biological processes that are involved. The one I really want to focus on is the apoptosis because that is actually, and there's a little comment in that one for those when you go over the PDF, or at least it should pull up. Apoptosis is actually the innate signaling for cells to die. So they say every 7 years we turn over all of our cells. We are made up of 37 trillion cells. Every 7 years we are brand new cells. So our body has this beautiful function already built within it to literally discard cells or allow cells to engage in a death process so that new cells can be regenerated, right? So there's either a replacement or a repair. That repair, again, is going to not be the apoptosis, but part of maybe the repair or the replacement, right? Depending on the scenario at hand, is going to be the removal of the cells that are not working at that point in time. Before I go, any questions so far?
Nope, all good.
Nope. Okay, cool, cool. Oh, that's fun. You could wait, how did that happen? Sorry, I just clicked another button and now I can see the slideshow in our chat. Technology is so funny. Um, so another thing that happens in the evening is metabolic waste is going to be cleared from the brain. This is going to be through your lymphatic system. This is not your lymphatic system. This is a separate system that works specifically to just clear waste from the brain. The lymphatic system is the body's general network for draining waste and immunity cellular transport during the day. So think about like the trash collector versus the main sewer lines. But through all of these processes that happen at night, your mitochondrial function increases. So as this detox is happening, right, the place where this ATP is made, it gets stronger, right? If you just consider, the impact of that and then what that does for the next day and then what that does for the next day. It's just it's a beautiful process. And just to be able to see, right, this is the body's innate healing. It knows exactly what to do as long as we give it what it needs when it needs it to do it. Um, I was talking to a client about this yesterday, and part of what it came down to was do we have the knowledge and the framework when we say, right, traditionally speaking, like give the body what it needs? Their comment was like, well, sometimes it's so hard to interpret it. And it's like, well, definitely. And if we don't have this knowledge of how it works, we may end up making choices that work completely against it because of the framework that we've been taught about what it needs to start with. So hopefully that makes sense because as we learn this stuff, right, these frameworks are, when it comes to a belief system, it's not a single belief system. It's all the experiences that we've had. It's beliefs that feed beliefs. And so sometimes, I think of beliefs as like these Russian stack dolls, right? We can change the inner ones, but unless you engage in some type of like critical thinking or questioning that lets you see larger belief systems and how they're connected to things, these are these larger belief systems, right? As we shift the awareness of this stuff, the choices that you get to make change entirely because now you're learning something, and every choice you make is like, am I working with this or am I working against this? Fire is beautiful. When people go camping and they light fires, and even if you have a fireplace at home, right? This at night used to be the light that we had prior to indoor artificial light. And so this nighttime firelight would actually, and does still, increase alpha brain wave lengths, excuse me. So you're going to have this relaxed alertness, this calmness. Um, we talked about alpha a couple calls ago in relationship to Lisa Miller's work, and alpha alpha wave lengths are available everywhere in nature. So you can literally go outside and sit next to a creek and receive frequency from the earth that's going to increase your alpha brainwave state. You can engage in meditation. That's going to support that. Anything that is going to allow you to connect to earth, nature, something else that's alive is going to create this in some way, shape, or form. So I wanted just to highlight that piece of, we can gaze at fire, we can gaze at candles, what it does, right? As far as the shift from high focus beta to this more meditative alpha, there are lots of ways that we can promote this alpha state.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you for
Um,
saying something because I can't see you.
well, yeah, it just reading that last slide, about, um, that kind of amber red light,
Mhm,
like stimulating the alpha waves. What about doing that in the morning? Like, since, when you're waking up in that 5 to 7 hour, that was,
mhm,
talking about how that is like a time you're supposed to be more meditative.
mhm.
Like, what would that look like? Would that throw it off in any way?
Potentially only because that alpha, right, is going to signal to create melatonin.
Okay,
And so in that melatonin aspect, that's not necessarily the thing that you want in the morning.
got it.
Um, I mean, red light does have a number of healing qualities and properties for muscle repair and things like that too. So
Right.
if you're using it in that sense, use it by all means. Can you also allow yourself then to maybe after that, let's say you are up at 5:30 before the sun comes up. If you want to use that red light, go for it. But then can you
Hmm.
also in conjunction go out and see the sun after to then engage in that process? So
Right.
it's kind of it depends on your life, right? And just
Yeah,
how you're living. I'm not going to say there's one set of ways to do all the things, but
for sure. I just was curious if that would just kind of like disrupt the process or not,
yeah, I
you know?
mean, I don't think it's necessarily going to fully disrupt it because red light has a number of healing qualities, right? And if you're
Yeah.
naturally waking up, but I would say, if you're doing that and then you're staying inside for the next 6 to 8 hours,
Yeah.
potentially. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Um, any other questions?
Not so far.
Okay.
I love it though. I'm
Light,
writing everything down.
yeah, it's just, and we don't even think about the way, seriously, like how many times a day we interface with light because we
Oh,
do
I
it
know.
all the time. Um,
Yeah.
and this slide here is this to me was the biggest kicker. Um, So we touched on briefly, right, a little bit ago, that incongruency factor and the importance of the eyes seeing what the skin is feeling. And if that incongruency exists, those sensory processing issues can occur. Um, Part of that sensory processing, I'm going to jump down just a little bit. That week one, right, when we talked about that internal contradiction of your body giving you a signal, but you pushing through that stress response, right? So if the stress response is saying like back up, move away, even if it is not trauma based, right? But just that cortisol, right? Your body's saying like, I want to use the energy. Maybe that means you go for a walk around the block, right? You're still able to think, but if you're like, no, I'm going to stay and I'm going to push through this, you're actually going to have that stress response paradox where that cortisol, because it's not being used in the way that the body wants to, is actually going to create more cortisol. So that's one of the things that happens here when we have incongruent light, particularly at night. So bright blue light at night after sunset is going to be part of that incongruency. And unfortunately, blue light is in everything. It's in our LED lights, it's in every screen, it's in the lights that are in your fridge. I mean, even some of the red lights that we can buy are literally LED lights wrapped in red. So it's not a true red amber light. And so if, right, our eyes are taking in this bright blue frequency, and again, it doesn't necessarily look blue to us, but remember, our visual light that we take in is only 0% of that entire spectrum. Like that just blows my mind. There are things that we're receiving that we don't see, right? At least with our eyes. And so when we take in that light, but our skin is taking in darkness, we're going to suppress that melatonin sequence of events. We're going to get these daytime signals via the melanopsin pathway, excuse me. And basically, all of the alert centers that live within us, particularly in the brain, are going to be signaled to turn on because we're saying it's morning, but the rest of the body knows that it's dark. And so, in that contradiction, you're going to see late night cortisol be increased anyway, which is then going to, when we talk about what that nighttime light and those detox pathways and that cellular healing that is supposed to take place at night after the sun goes down, just sitting down to watch a movie in front of the TV has the ability, if you're doing that every single night, to interrupt your circadian rhythm. It's going to interrupt some of these pieces. um, that you may wake up not feeling rested, right? You may wake up not feeling 100% because the body isn't able to take action on the metabolic processes that it needs to because it's receiving incongruent information. And so, I believe this bottom one, artificial light versus daytime, there's another study that is linked there. Allen stands for artificial light at night. Excuse me. And the reason that I put this is because just as I did like little Google searches on things, because sometimes I like to see what Google will give me, even if I have research from other places that will say something different. Everything that I saw was like, artificial light at night is terrible for this stuff. And then I put, well, what about artificial light during the day? And it's like, oh, it's fine because it's blue light and it's going to wake you up. This light is not the same thing as that light. It is not in any way, shape, or form. That is like saying artificial meat grown in a lab is the same as eating a chicken or a cow that is alive and lives on beautiful land. It is
Hmm.
not the same at all.
Yeah.
And so that artificial light, even during the day, I think the article that I have linked is a research article about individuals who primarily work indoors from 9 to 5 and how even going outside midday helps support type 2 diabetes. And so
Mm.
if we go back to blood sugar and blood glucose, right, and all of those things that we talked about last week, if we add in this artificial light, right, what is that signaling during the day that the body's not actually getting because it needs the real thing? So just some food for thought because um, I know there are times where we need light in certain ways and maybe fire and certain things aren't available. Um, but during the day, if possible, have your windows open so you can get that natural light. Another thing I want to mention, sitting by the window is not going to be the same as actually going out in the sun and receiving that input. And the reason for that, unfortunately, as I look at this window that is in the container, um, most windows are made with glass that actually cut the UVA and UVB lights that come in by like up to 80-90%. So
Mhm.
you're not going to get the full medicinal aspect of being inside sitting by a window versus going outside and actually taking in that light. Because your eyes and your skin, again, you're going to receive different inputs because something is there. Same thing like the sunglasses, right? Even if that's contacts or glasses in general, when you take in that morning sunlight, you want no sunscreen, you want no contacts, you want no lights because you literally need to receive the exact same input. Um,
I have
so
another question.
yeah, go for it.
Sorry.
No, you're
Um,
great.
um, okay, so sorry, going back to your after sunset artificial blue light, LEDs and
Yeah.
screens do the following. And then you mentioned how like even a lot of the red lights are still LEDs, just like wrapped in a red film, essentially. So
Yeah.
like would the best alternative, because I mean like, in the winter or whatever, it gets dark at 4:30. Like you still need to like go throughout your day. So like I guess I mean my first gut thought is like firelight or like any like light a bunch of candles. Like that would essentially be probably the best form, correct?
There
Or
are,
do they sell actual light bulbs
so
that
they
have?
sell actual light bulbs that are red light.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I will find the actual bulb. Some of them are as weird as this may sound. For like I don't know the proper word for this, but if you were to make a habitat like you have like for like lizards and stuff, right? And you were to put it in your house. I can't think of
Oh,
the
yes.
actual word, but
Yeah.
like you have certain light to create a certain
Yeah.
habitat. Those are
Yeah.
not LED lights. Those are actual red
The
lights.
heat lamps.
Yep. Yep.
Got it.
So it's not necessarily a heat lamp that you're going to use, but there are actual light bulbs where it is
Okay.
true red light coming out.
Okay.
You just have to make sure that you look into every company that sells something like that should have some type of study or research to support what they are saying about that product. If you can't find it, the likelihood is it doesn't do what it says it does.
Yeah.
If you are going to engage in blue light at night, one of the best things you can do is get blue light blocker glasses
Hmm.
and
Okay.
wear sleeves. So, because I know that is more challenging, yes, during the winter when the sun goes down at 5
Yeah.
and it's like, how are we gonna make this work right now?
Yeah.
Um, I didn't actually talk about daylight savings in here, and that was one of the things that I wanted to. So I'll maybe mention that on office hours or something like that. But
Mhm.
daylight savings, or maybe it's in the circadian rhythm one, but it will bring it up at some point because it is literally one of the most disruptive things to our nervous system and our entire body
Yeah.
because we start to shift things like we shift everything, right? The way we eat, whatnot. That daylight savings is not telling the sun to come up or down any earlier.
Right.
It's literally just changing the time that we have put to it, which then means we
Yeah.
change everything and we change everything again. And that really has an impact on small children, and their overall developmental and emotional cycles as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I forget where I have that listed, but it's in here because it's one of the things where it's like, are we still doing this? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so blue light blockers, I use a brand called Swanick. And the reason I chose them is because they literally showed the research that they did to show that over 98% of the blue light is emitted when you use those. Because you can
Mhm.
buy a pair of like $25, $30 blue light blockers, but are they really blue light blockers? You know what
Right.
I mean? Like how much light are they actually filtering out? So,
Right.
um, yeah, those would be the recommendations that I would say.
Okay.
And I know it's not always easy to uh change every single light bulb in the house,
Right.
like some of
Right.
the lights that we have in here. I choose to keep them off during the day because I know this
Hmm.
stuff. But I mean, I have not seen this type of light in a red light. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I probably haven't looked hard enough, but most of the ones that I've seen are actual bulbs,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So just depending on the light, you might need to play around a little bit and figure out something.
Yeah, that was definitely something I did not even know or think about. Like I just thought, oh, like we could just change it to red and then we'll have red light at night, you know?
Yep. And it
So
depends. Some things, right? Like even your phone when it's like, oh, let's put it on amber. Is it really amber?
yeah. Yeah.
So even, dimmers can be helpful, but if the quality of that frequency that we don't see turning the dimmer on doesn't mean that that frequency changes necessarily.
Yeah.
What we
Yeah.
perceive it as the brightness does, but the frequency itself stays the same.
Okay.
So, great, 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 great questions. And then just the last thing that I wanted to touch on, because I know the title, right? We said we were going to talk about water, and yes, water is part of light interfacing through our skin. Um, I mentioned this I think I mentioned this in the office hours for the first week in the etymology. The word soul, literally the origin of it is returning to or belonging from the sea. Excuse me. And so I just mentioned that light interfacing with the skin and how it's absorbed through water. Water in our body is very different than water in a glass. And again, in the comments, these two quotes, I have a hyperlink to the place that I got it because it's a beautiful article. But in speaking about the water in our bodies, it clings to membranes, it wraps around proteins, it lines blood vessels and fascia. Um, this interfacial water shows altered mobility property and dielectric properties compared with free-flowing water. And it's really considered now an active player in cellular function rather than a passive background. And so the article also shows research on how light actually guides the structural properties of water. And I thought this part was beautiful, just tying back into what we learned about ATP in those pieces last week. Water inside mitochondria lines the ATP synthesis nanomotor, which is the enzyme that assembles ATP and shapes proton flow along the inner mitochondrial membrane, which again is where that ATP is created. Theoretical work suggests that small changes in the viscosity and the organization of this water can alter how effectively ATP synthesis rotates and how quickly protons return through the enzyme. Um, so again, just really seeing right this beautiful dance that happens with light and water and just the metabolic processes that happen inside of us. It's such a different way when we see all of this stuff as alive and purposeful and free flowing. It's just so different than what we've been taught from that medical model of like, this is your body, this is a mass, this is what's wrong with it. This diagnosis, this is how you have to manage it. And when we can see all of the adaptive features that the body holds, it's such a beautiful reminder again that the body is always healing. It's always working in these beautiful ways. It's just sometimes the responses it gives us we don't like or want. But again, how have we been taught to live that actually goes against the way our body intends to live, or shouldn't even say our body, the metabolic aspects of us intend to live. And we'll hop into nervous system and polyvagal next week, because then we'll go into food and some other pieces. But any questions?
No, but that was so good. Oh my goodness. I it's funny because I was reading a lot of or seeing a lot of things about light and actually when you showed the pictures of the beach, the people on the beach, I saw something recently that said that seed oils, like if you start removing seed oils from your diet completely, you're like able to be out in the sun for much longer
Yep.
without getting sunburned.
Yep.
Like I don't know. So just going kind of everything is holistic, everything is all connected. Like,
Yep. The reason for that, the seed oils have a direct connection to the melanin in our body being able to hold or not hold light.
mm,
And so most of the time when you think about how we've been taught to live, right? We are inside working all the time. We haven't, look up the word solar callus. I didn't mention it in today, but solar callus is our body's ability to hold and bring in light.
mm,
So is someone who doesn't have a lot of melanin, like me, right? Very fair skin. If I'm going
yeah,
to go out midday from 10 to 2, 10 to 4, I am going to get burnt because I haven't trained my skin to do that.
yeah,
My partner, he has red hair, but let me tell you, he's outside in the sun all day. That guy already has a tan on his legs, and it is the end of March.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like, how is this? And I'm like, oh, because you're outside all the time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so when you just have that interface, it makes a huge difference. But again, we're talking, you go on vacation for these 2 weeks, right? Most foods aren't the only thing that have seed oils. A lot of sunscreen have seed oils too.
Mm,
That seed oil is actually going to, seed oils are anything that's a seed that
yeah,
becomes an oil. So if you look at the ingredient list, even things like sunflower oil or things like that, um, the skin is alive. It's going to move through and it's going to enter the bloodstream and it's going to have a direct impact on the melanin, which is then going to have an impact on how we receive the sun.
yeah.
Most of us are wearing hats, glasses. So again, we have that incongruency when we're on vacation in Mexico for the week. We're drinking a bunch of margaritas or we're eating food that
Hmm.
have the seed oils that
Yeah,
we're not engaged in the sun in the way that it needs to be. Even a lot of medications, I don't know any specific that have this, but I've seen this in warnings where it says like, do not go out in the sun if you're taking this medication, because that medication is literally going to change your cellular
right.
structure so that when you receive that thing,
Yeah,
it does something that is damaging because the cells can't take that in.
right. Crazy. Yeah, that was a really good one. I took a lot of notes on that one.
Good, good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to me just how, when we think about light, right? Like before you actually start studying it, it's just kind of a word, what I
Hmm.
mean? And it's like, okay, go outside and get sun.
Yeah.
But then when you
Yeah.
really break down the principles of it, it's like, oh, I interface with this thing and not just the sun, but I interface with the quality of light every single day at all times.
Yeah.
And something just to even to consider, and I didn't necessarily mention this, but I saw some things that were kind of hinting at this, right? Our body is made up of mass, but if our soul is made up of photons, right? If our soul is made up of energy and light particles, how do we take in light in that capacity as well?
Hmm.
Right? What are our day-to-day choices doing or not doing that's impacting that light as a whole? So again, another shift if you're really interested in
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
to consider.
So cool.
Okay. It's my favorite. This, yeah, I could talk about.
Yeah, this topic is definitely interesting for sure.
Yeah. Any
And
other
I'm like, I feel like I'm just scraping the surface too, so I'm excited.
light is one of those you can go down some deep, deep rabbit holes. And like I said,
Yeah.
this is kind of just skimming the surface of all the various things.
Yeah.
That yeah, you can definitely take each one a little deeper. Like when you really, even with windows, right? UVA, UVB, looking at just that quality of specificity and what that
Hmm.
does. Some of the podcasts that I'll link have like the people speak specifically to that because that's
Yeah.
their background and there are things, yeah, every time I hear about light, I'm like, Oh, that makes so much sense, and I never would have thought of that.
Hmm. Yeah, so crazy. Yeah, I love it. Well, and especially when it comes to like interior design, I've been thinking a lot more about that lately. Just like I mainly just in my own house. I haven't I there's no way I've wrapped my head around it enough to like do this for other people yet, but like even just yeah, trying to understand how I could make those types of switches in my own house, like it's wild.
Yep, yep,
Crazy, crazy. It's such a cool like thing to be thinking about. I love it.
yeah. Something we're even considering. We're gonna build out another container on the property here, probably starting next month. But we've been playing around with how do we keep the structure of the container, but we get removable walls, like pocket doors that are
Hmm.
half of the walls, right? So we can
Hmm.
literally remove them, have that direct sun, but then
Yeah.
when weather or other, things that you want the protection for, we can
Yeah.
put those back in. But
Yeah. That's so cool.
yeah,
I love that.
it's very, very different way of building. So I agree with
Yes.
you on that. What could this possibly look like? Because
Yeah.
even if it's like, yeah, the way lights are set up or the way windows are set, even
Hmm.
different plants to bring in certain
Right.
qualities that help with air, or you know what I mean? Like
Totally.
everything gets to have an intention behind it.
Totally. Yeah. So cool to think about.
Mm. Well, I really
Awesome.
enjoyed
Thank you so
it. You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, if you have any questions.